Hollywood wanted her to be a star, but she was busy co-authoring neuroscience papers at Harvard. Just think about that for a second. The year is 1999. You're Queen Amidala, the face of the biggest movie franchise on the planet. The entire world knows your name. Every studio wants to throw a blank check at you. For pretty much anyone else, this is it. This is the top of the mountain. But for Natalie Portman, it was a trap. This is the story of how one of the world's most famous actors built a system, a protocol, to turn her intelligence into a weapon of total creative control.
And this quote? This isn't just some catchy line for a magazine. It's a mission statement. It's basically a declaration of war against the entire Hollywood system. This was her drawing a line in the sand. She wasn't just picking books over blockbuster fame. She was making a calculated, strategic choice to refuse to be a product. And that was the moment the industry had to realize, oh, we're not dealing with another starlet here. Nope, they were dealing with an architect.
So to really get inside this architect's blueprint, we're going to break down her journey into 6 key parts. We'll kick things off with that wild decision to leave Hollywood for Harvard. Then we'll look at the isolation that shaped her, decode her core philosophy, the intelligence mandate, and see her protocol in, well, brutal action. After that, we'll see how she rewrote the rules for everyone, and then finally, we'll figure out how you can apply these same ideas yourself. All right, let's zoom back to that game-changing moment in 1999. In any classic hero's story, this is the part called the call to adventure. But what's so amazing here is that for her, the adventure wasn't Hollywood calling her name. It was her refusing that call.
It's honestly hard to wrap your head around how big of a deal this was. While all her peers were learning how to walk a red carpet, she was down in the basement of William James Hall co-authoring a paper titled Frontal Lobe Activation During Object Permanence. Seriously, she was using near-infrared spectroscopy, basically shining light into babies' brains to see how they learn that an object still exists even when they can't see it. Now, think about that metaphor for a second. At the exact moment the world wanted to turn her into a fleeting image, a temporary celebrity, she was literally studying the science of permanence. She wasn't taking a 4-year vacation, she was researching how to build a version of herself that could never, ever be erased. So the slide really just lays it all out. On the left, you've got the standard playbook. It's an industry that runs on things that fade. Youth, beauty. It's designed to make you simple, put you in a box, and eventually replace you. But the Portman Protocol on the right, that's built on things that grow over time. Cognitive density. That's not just about being book smart. It means building an inner world so rich and complex that no one can ever fully figure you out. And the psychological fortress? That's the resilience that comes from it. An unshakable core that lets you handle the absolute madness of public life.
And that right there is the key. Harvard was never a detour from her career. It was her career. It was the deliberate, strategic move to build her foundation. She was intentionally making herself harder to define, harder to label, and because of that, impossible to throw away. She was investing in her own internal architecture, something that would outlast any role, any franchise, any trend.
Okay, so where does a mindset like that even come from? To understand why an 18-year-old would walk away from that kind of global spotlight, you have to look at where she started. Her whole life was basically a training camp for this kind of strategic thinking. She was born in Jerusalem, her dad a fertility doctor, her mom an artist. So right from the get-go, her world was this mix of hard science and creative expression. Then, when she was just 11, a scout for Revlon saw her in a pizza place and offered her a modeling contract. She said no, flat out, apparently calling it intellectually bankrupt. An 11-year-old. A year later, she gives that unbelievable performance in Leon the Professional. To play a character like Matilda, a kid who's seen so much trauma, she had to build what you can only call a neural firewall, a way to process all that darkness without letting it destroy her. That was her trial by fire.
And this brings us to her biggest enemy, what we'll call institutional simplification. It's what the Hollywood machine does. It takes these incredibly complex, talented kids and grinds them down into simple, one-note products that are easy to sell and easy to replace. She saw it happen to other young actors all the time, their careers and sometimes their lives just fizzling out before they even hit 20. She saw that trap, and for her, education was the escape hatch. And this quote just nails the price she paid for that escape hatch. Think about it. While filming the Star Wars prequels, arguably the biggest movie event of the decade, she's sitting in her trailer studying for her high school finals. The entire world is losing its mind over lightsabers, and she's trying to pass a calculus exam. It made her a total outsider. She was too serious for her friends at school, but way too academic for the film crews. But that isolation, that wasn't a bug. It was a feature. It was the cost of her independence. She chose to be the dork in the short term so she could be the strategist for the rest of her life. And all of that leads us right here, to the core of her entire operating system. We're shifting from her story to her philosophy, what we're calling the intelligence mandate. This is the place where she forged her most powerful weapon. So what exactly is this mandate? Well, for Portman, acting isn't pretending. It's a high-stakes biological simulation. It's about completely rejecting the idea that you just have to rely on some vague feeling or raw emotion, which is a recipe for burnout. Instead, every single choice has to be backed by hard, almost scientific data. She has this great quote, "I don't want to be a muse, I want to be the one who makes the choice." That's an architect talking, not just an actor.
And this is exactly why her time at Harvard was so important. By studying psychology and neuroscience, she was literally upgrading her own acting software. I mean, it's one thing to act sad. It's another thing entirely to understand the precise neurological chain reaction that's happening in the brain during grief. That deep knowledge became her secret weapon, her ultimate competitive advantage. She wasn't just memorizing lines. She was reverse engineering the very consciousness that produced them.
Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? Well, it's a process. Step one is to see yourself not as some fixed thing, but as something that's been built, something you can take apart. Step two is using psychology to do just that, to disassemble it. Only then, in step three, do you deconstruct the character you're playing. Then, step four is where the magic happens. You simulate their biological reality, not just how they feel, but how they breathe, how they move, how they exist. And then the final step, maybe the most important one, is reassembly. You put your own self back together, carefully and precisely. That's how she's able to go to these incredibly dark places for a role and always find her way back. Now, having a philosophy is great, but the proof is in the pudding, right? So let's take a look at how this protocol actually translates from a cool idea into a repeatable system that produces some of the most incredible work you'll ever see. It all starts with something we can call the deep audit. She doesn't pick projects based on who's in them or how much they'll make at the box office. The number one question she asks is, will this role force a cognitive upgrade? Is it going to make me learn a new skill, a new language, a new way of seeing the world? If the answer is no, she's not interested. It is a completely ruthless filter designed for one thing and one thing only: growth. And you can see this system taken to its absolute extreme in Black Swan. To just call this method acting doesn't even come close. This was what you might call a biometric saturation protocol. For an entire year, she trained 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. She was swimming a mile every morning. She basically lived on carrots and almonds, lost 20 pounds, and even broke a rib during a lift. But this wasn't about suffering for her art. No, the goal was way more strategic. The goal was neuromuscular sabotage, to systematically rewire her body's muscle memory, to force it to forget it belonged to Natalie Portman, and to only remember what it felt like to be a world-class ballerina on the verge of a complete breakdown. And this level of detail isn't just physical. Look at what she did for the movie Jackie. Any actor would hire a dialect coach, but with her Harvard brain, she deconstructed Jacqueline Kennedy's iconic voice. She didn't just map the sounds, she mapped the exact patterns of her breathing, seeing the voice as a signifier of a woman processing an unbelievable trauma while trying to project strength to the entire world. She was replicating the biological reality of grief. That's the protocol. So, what's the end game? What's the big reward for all this insane work and intellectual dedication? Well, it was nothing short of completely changing the rules of the game in Hollywood. Her return wasn't just a comeback, it was a resurrection. She came back as a completely new and way more powerful kind of artist. You can see her whole evolution laid out perfectly on this timeline. She starts as the child anomaly in Leon, a performer with a depth that just seems impossible for her age. Then she becomes the strategist by choosing Harvard, playing the long game. The Oscar for Black Swan, that's her arriving as the master of her craft. But she didn't just stop there. Now she's evolved into the architect, directing, producing, and controlling the entire creative vision from the ground up. Her work as a director, like on the film A Tale of Love and Darkness, which, by the way, she also wrote and starred in, all in Hebrew, is the ultimate proof. She took this dense, complicated novel and translated it into film, applying her protocol not just to one character, but to an entire world. And that's her legacy. She completely destroyed the myth that being smart is a distraction from being creative. She proved that your brain, your frontal lobe, is the most powerful tool an artist can have. She threw out the old standard starlet model and replaced it with something new, the strategic intellectual. Which brings us to the final and I think the most important part of all this. What's the big lesson here? What's the takeaway that we can pull from her journey and actually use in our own lives? When you really boil it down, this isn't a story about Hollywood. It's a story about the power of your own mind. It's a reminder that in a world that is constantly trying to make you simple, to put you in a neat little box, the only real weapon you have is your own depth. The lesson is simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Knowledge is the only real power there is. Your greatest competitive edge, doesn't matter if you're an artist, an entrepreneur, whatever, is the complexity of the mind that you build for yourself. So that leaves us with one final question to think about. What's the standard path that everyone expects you to follow? And what's the hard intellectual work, the deep audit, the protocol that you need to build to make yourself essential? Because when it's all said and done, the only thing that's truly yours is the internal architecture you've built. Make sure it's a fortress. Stop being a product and start building your own protocol.